song, freedom, land of the revolution. We won, if we don't get what we want, we fight on. The time has come for some freedom, land of the revolution. We won, if we don't get what we want, we fight on.
Hi, it's Rachel with Divine Matrix Solutions, and I'm going to do an interview with a friend of mine named Monica, who I met after I gave my life to Jesus. And so this interview is going to be about what her experience was with her husband on Halloween weekend of the year 2021. Hi, Monica. How are you doing?
Hi, good to be here.
Thanks for coming and doing this talk with us. I think it's so important for people to hear your story. It is so much more common than most people think it is. And so I'm really excited and honored to have you here talking with me today. Thank you so much. All right. So just to kind of get things, rolling here, I gave my life to Jesus on I say my full surrender date was September 30th of 2021. And I really felt like God was asking me to not take my website down because he wanted me to talk to people that were searching out those services still, even though it was a bit, I don't want to say deceptive because, but he wanted me to have the opportunity to talk to people like you who were searching out these services and had some extraordinary experiences. And so, as you know, after we spoke, I got to tell you that, but I had actually just said a prayer, and I was just really crying out to God in my soul, asking, why do I have all this information and why do I know all this stuff if you don't want me to talk about it? And I said, God, I need you to make this really clear to me because I don't want to have to try and figure it out. And I certainly didn't want it to be my wrong analysis that had me thinking that I needed to talk about this. And so within probably less than an hour, I received your phone call. And so it was
amazing.
Absolutely an answer to prayer in every way. And so I answered the phone. Divine Matrix Solutions, can I help you? And I don't even think I gave you much chance to talk to me. I just started off with giving you my testimony and letting you know that I wasn't offering those services anymore and why.
Yeah.
And I'll go into that later in another testimonial video, but if you would just share with people what was happening in your life right then when you called me and what was going on, what had you searching it out?
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel, so much. That was a beautiful entry. And I really, I know in my heart and through all my experiences that I've been through around this topic that we're going to discuss today, that there are no chance meetings. And that was clear once we found out, how this all played out.
Mm-hmm.
So I have had a relationship with my God, my Creator, Jesus, since I was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems no matter where I've gone through in life, we'll get into that later on another segment about my life's trials and tribulations, so to speak, and how God has always been there for me to bring me back if be, or to just walk with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm married to a man, Rob, and we have been through quite the relationship, and it's all kind of centered around having God involved in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, since COVID-19 began, we were separated at that time, and I started really feeling like there's way more to this pandemic than what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I started searching I started searching for truth anywhere I could find it. And I started, checking out the resources I was looking at to find out what was really going on and how I really felt about that. And so fast forward, me and my husband got back together, and we had started watching a show, And We Know, about 4 or so years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it covers a lot of the Q codes that are going on that people may be aware of and may not be that are watching this, but we can go into further detail of that. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of truths coming out. And so in searching for those truths, there were some things that were coming up that appeared to be very factual. Mm-hmm. That's leading into this new movement, Christ consciousness type of reality for a lot of people. And in, having an open mind for the first time to kind of look at our world differently through this pandemic, mm-hmm. Just seeing the things that were going on in the government, seeing the things that were being covered on the news, seeing things that were being, blocked, knowledge from being shared. Mm-hmm, I mean, mm-hmm. very bizarre behavior, mm-hmm. and all around, and so it really divided a lot of people for me, because I just didn't want to go along with the status quo. Right. That was not setting in my heart. Right. And so I had many conversations with God about it, and a lot of it was biblically centered. Mm-hmm. But then the more we dug, the more, I was finding things about the more serious topics of mind control and child trafficking, and all of this
things like the Masons, right?
Yes.
And this was answering a lot of questions for you guys, wasn't it? For your husband's childhood, your past as well as your childhood, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. and other events that I had been through prior to my relationship with my husband. Mm-hmm. That was also calling into play here. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I had, been a part of a reality that things that I was seeing and experiencing through my young adulthood, mm-hmm. were, so to speak, not real, in my head, kind of thing. And come to find out they weren't. And we'll go into that, at a mm-hmm. different time. Mm-hmm. But really to think that I was starting to feel like I was crazy. Right. All these experiences I've mm-hmm. had. And there's nobody to share it with. Right. So my husband was always on the same wavelength on that aspect with me. Mm-hmm. And so as things progressed, and different podcasts that I was looking at, prayers that I was praying, all this stuff, and then to find out what was going on with hidden knowledge. Okay. And hidden mm-hmm. knowledge was a big one for me, because mm-hmm. this was like new. And because of my experiences through my life with this type of mind control and, different nefarious things going on that are just all in your head.
Right. Kind of always finding yourself in situations that, even though you specifically tried to avoid things like that, you'd wind up in situations that you never thought were even possible. Right. I mean.
Right. Yeah. And then when I felt like we were being lied to at such a major scale, mm-hmm. then I was like, okay, I really need to dig into this and really find out, mm-hmm. because I'm a truth seeker.
Right.
Through all my life, that's one thing I've been consistent, is I cannot stand people that hide the truth.
Right.
And now that our government is involved, churches are involved. It's such a bigger grand scale that I felt like I had to expand that knowledge and for the first time again, have an open mind.
Right.
So because me and my husband, we both like, history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to approach this with an open mind. And so my husband and I reconciled, we got back together, and then
could you maybe, I didn't mean to interrupt. Could you maybe give us just a little background on your husband's childhood and what was his profession? And then.
So my husband has a very dark childhood, and he comes from a very prominent family. And the research that we've actually done, there is a possible line to some of the presidents, meaning specifically Lincoln. And his family was well-to-do, and they pretty much owned the town. And to back up to his early childhood, and this is what he shared with me. So his father died tragically with no signs right before he was born. So then, in the conversations I had with my husband, I thought maybe his mother suffered postpartum depression. And in doing so, she sought out kind of the wrong leadings at the church. And he grew up in Redding, California. He's from Orland. And so what we started to discover and understanding that my husband was always very vocal about his life. And sometimes he'd be so vocal about it that it would be like,
a little bit off-putting,
really happen or
okay.
what, right? But there's no doubt at all.
Right.
This stuff is real.
Right.
So, anyway, so he shared with me that his mother got caught up in a church cult. And in my researching of what he was telling me, there has been a lot of evidence that is factual. And it was a female leader, and he was abused sexually, physically, emotionally,
ritualistically,
until he was about 15 years old.
Right.
His family would not come and get him, meaning his grandparents. And so he was left to have to go through and suffer. It was horrible. It was a cult of strong women leaders. And he remembers just crazy stories that nobody would ever believe of them putting him in a circle, the women, and just torturing him emotionally, just saying he's a horrible human being, to you're gay, to this and that, anything to mess up your, to fracture your mind as a young child. So my husband has a very strong personality. So about 15, he was done. And he had, cried out to God several times, in wanting help out of this. And he was literally delivered out of this. So he said that there was actually powers there with him. They were not able to stop.
Wow.
So,
and then did you say there was a Masonic connection with his family, his dad, his mom, both?
Yes. So I don't know a ton about his mom's side.
Okay.
I know more about his dad's side, and his dad's side, his great grandfather was a Mason, and we believe his father was a Mason. And in researching towns of power, you find a Masonic connection.
Mm-hmm.
He said his grandmother had owls all over her house, just kind of strange things. Just the fact that they lost their son so tragically for no reason. They said it was a brain aneurysm or a brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of goes along with kind of, this Illuminati, Masonic, what do you call that, order, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, in
Mm-hmm.
families of sacrifice.
Right.
And they had lost a baby daughter as well. I don't know the specifics around that. I think she lived for a few days.
Okay.
So
And then
anyway, there is definitely a family connection. They have money. They've got, they own the almond farms out in Orland.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he's got many cousins, and he's the black sheep, so he doesn't really speak to anybody out there.
Right.
So yeah.
And then what about his sort of job experience?
So this gets more interesting, and I can go on forever about this. But my husband, how do I explain this? At a very young age, he did odd jobs, as we all did. And then at around 16, I think he worked on his family farms, ranches, and did some of that too. But he was mostly with his mother until he was 15. So they were poor. It was just all about the religious order cult that they were in, that they weren't allowed to really do much.
Right.
So afterwards, he went to stay with his grandparents. And at 16, he, had a girlfriend. He was not a bad looking guy, and so he had some girlfriends and stuff at the high school he went to, and they all grew up together around the same area. And so they were in a car accident. I think they were racing or something, and she ended up wrapping herself around a tree and dying instantly.
Wow.
And then
super traumatizing.
Yeah. And so then the town blamed my husband for that.
Wow.
So that he was there, and, the events that unfolded, I guess it was not uncommon for bad things to happen to my husband, and for people to notice that. And so I think a year or two later, he lost another 2 friends.
Wow.
On a country road. They were killed, and turned out that the firefighters, they ended up burning down the structure that was on the corner of where all those tragedies were happening. So it turned out that it was like a what do you call that? A witch's haven or something.
Okay.
There were stories about that.
Okay.
And because of the town's experience with this area, they torched it.
Okay.
Because they thought that there was something going on there.
Okay.
So after that, I guess my husband, he wasn't a perfect teenager, and he got into a lot of trouble. And so something happened. I don't think he ever really told me what happened, but he had got himself into trouble, and his grandmother knew the judge. That's another connection.
Yeah.
Knew the judge, and he was going to go into the Army, but they wanted him to go into the Marines.
Okay.
So he ended up going into the Marines.
Gotcha.
From there, he was, he was a part of 9/11. He's been all over the Middle East, Haiti, Philippines, Japan. He became a staff sergeant pretty quickly. So there could be some order there as well, that, he worked really hard to, he loved the Marine Corps. He did. My husband is a full-blown Marine through and through. And he loved his men. And he was part of a unit that was deployed. We figured that in the amount of time that he was in the Marine Corps for 12 and a half years, he was probably in straight firefights for 6.
Wow.
So he would always read the Bible to his men, and they would pray before they went into a battle. And he said they'd never lost a battle, because of, the belief in the Bible and everything. His guys would give him a hard time.
Wow.
But they would still do it,
Right. He considered himself a Christian, would you say?
He did. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So he was always very vocal about what had happened to him as a child, and he was always kind of seeking, to be delivered from that and to have that close relationship with God.
Right. Right.
So during the Marine Corps, he had several different experiences. He and not only did he have experiences that I'll share with you, he also was exposed to all. And my husband, he was always very big on. He was a history buff, so he knew where all the biblical spots were in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Got ya.
And he had missions in those areas. So he was exposed to really, I would say, all the spots that have been talked about and discussed in the Bible for current times.
Right.
So, for example, Euphrates River, the Haditha Dam. His Marines wouldn't even go down into the dam. So,
wow.
Yeah. So they straight out said they would not go down there because of just the eeriness of the area and the literal feeling that comes over you of just doom. And, they could hear screaming underneath the dam. I mean, obviously there's something going on in that area that they were exposed to.
Yeah.
That shook Marines of all things, because they won't not go into a lot of areas. Right.
And I just to throw it out as sort of a teaser, we're gonna do another segment where we can go a little more into detail about what some of his experiences were in Afghanistan. And as you mentioned, hopefully I'm not getting any of this wrong, but he was inside of the dam at the same time that they were having this big firefight with the giants?
That I don't.
Not that he was in it.
I don't know too much about that. There was stuff that was going on. They were on some kind of mission, and it was leading them to have to go into the dam. And it was pretty much a hell no from the whole unit.
Wow.
So as my husband shared that information with me, he said that you could hear screaming and torturing and things that were going on. And there's been a lot of information coming out that I even saw. I was watching some program on the Nephilim in the caves of Afghanistan. I mean, there's a lot of ties to what's going on currently that I think people are reacting to, because it's a feel. It's something in your gut is just, questioning.
Well, and we're watching all of these biblical events unfold right in front of our eyes. I tried to stop myself from reading the Bible for years. It was really inconvenient, and even I couldn't avoid it anymore. God's word is written on our hearts, and we recognize when things are happening biblically, and it's incredibly impactful. And I urge everybody to really to search out and to read the Bible if you never have. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's great, Rachel, because it is so true. And, us knowing the knowledge that we do on this subject and stuff, it really calls into play how much the Bible was written for us in this time.
Right.
We just need to understand how to read it and decipher what's being said in there. But so many times, and all of these times through my life that I've fallen away from reading the Bible because I'm not great at it. Because it's sometimes hard for me to understand the context.
Yeah.
And, so I ask for understanding through God for that. But I haven't been a great Christian at all. And many of these things that have happened in my life have happened when I have opened myself up maybe for something else,
Right.
And
When you give the devil a foothold, right?
Right. And so God has always called me back.
Right.
I've always had that type of relationship with him, but it's been a good truth seeking to not challenge, but to call into question all the things that have happened in my life and my husband's story and all of these things, how true that relationship with God is for me.
Indeed.
And how he's delivered me out of a lot.
Right.
And I'm just so grateful for that relationship with him.
Speaking of that, though, let's talk about why exactly you reached out to me. What had you searching out my services, and what connected us? What had God tell you to call me at the moment that he did after I said my prayer? What was going on then?
Yeah. So my husband and I, we had been, watching podcasts together and finding out a lot about some stuff that's going on and the hidden Bible passages to Jasera Nasera. Let's talk about Jasera Nasera. We're going to a new money system, all of this stuff, right? So my husband he started getting into yoga. I guess we were separated. And he's always really liked yoga, but I hear you have to be careful with yoga too.
As it turns out,
it can bring in some certain energy. Right. So he was really focusing that we were kind of nearing the end and that there was going to be a final fallout to this whole pandemic, truths coming out about what's going on. And so through that, he started really getting more onto the crypto side of things. And I don't really know a ton about crypto, but he felt like that was in alignment with Jasera Nasera. And so he really started getting into that. And he was all about what he wanted to do in this new world after we're free, this quantum financial system that's going to come out, that he's going to want to help the vets. He's going to want to get med beds, and med beds were a whole part of this discovery that, we've been on as well, that there's going to be, healing technology that we're not even aware of right now.
Right.
So he kind of started to segue in. He's got such a strong personality that he really wanted to start driving change.
Okay.
Instead of just hearing what was going on in the world and, this and that, he really just grabbed on to this whole crypto financial thing. And so anyway, so he started really digging in deep, and he started seeking out other people online that were part of this crypto currency
community, for lack of a better
term, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So community. And so things started to get a little weird for me, because when he gets intense on something, he immediately wants me to just jump on board. And I was just like, nah, this and that. There were a lot of things like, oh, well, if you change your password, if you forget your password or anything, you're in your own bank, so you won't be able to get your money out if you put in thousands of dollars. I'm like,
Right.
that just doesn't make knowledgeable sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So there were things that I was just questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started getting with this cyber group, and things got really strange really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So he started with this team. I don't know, should I say the name of it? Actually, I'll probably have to get the name right before I share that.
Right. And
So,
I can always edit that out if you decide later you'd
okay.
like me to.
Okay. So he became a part of this team that was under, and a lot of people know of this, Whiplash on Telegram.
Okay.
And so I guess how it works is, there's different groups that attach themselves to one of the main characters, so to speak, on Telegram.
All right.
So he started to say that they're his soul family, that they started talking about a lot of stuff of the past and what's going on currently. And it just, the whole thing, I just had this whole gut about. I just didn't really understand it at first. And that he started talking about that some of the members were off-planet members, and they're bringing in technology, that because they're farther advanced than us.
Okay.
So it went from conversations like that to, this whole light work stuff, which I have to segue on a side note. Before my husband got involved with the cryptocurrency, he started to seek out light therapy.
Right.
Light therapy healing for his PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you want to mention the name of that, or we don't have to go into detail on it, but maybe
as long as you think it's safe to put it out there. I don't
completely up to you. You don't have to.
Well, let's mention the name right now, and then I can share the pamphlet later with everybody.
Okay.
But it's called Rasha.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband ran into a lady that came to a event that we were a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called the Rasha. And so it was here in Reno.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started seeking out this Rasha because it was something that the vet community was starting to hear about PTSD treatments and stuff that are going on in Mexico. So he's like, oh, well, hey, it's right here in Reno. What are the odds of that, right? So then he started reaching out to that community, and he did about 3 light therapy treatments where he laid in a chair, and I don't know the rest of the procedure. There's 2 different ways you can do it. You can lay on a bed, or you can lay and they infuse light and other stuff into your DNA.
Okay.
Which really, I mean, now I see how dangerous that is to really start.
Well, and especially when we
that.
start reading our Bible again.
Yep.
For me, for the first time, for you again, and putting things together more and more, and realizing Satan, masquerades as an angel of light.
Yes.
He's the light bearer.
Yes.
And New Age people generally refer to themselves as light workers.
Yes.
I just have been so ignorant about all of this for so long. So it was really eye-opening to me recently, but okay. Yeah. So
I'm familiar with light workers for sure. And I'll share that as well in my testimony of events.
So he's talking with all these people from Telegram, and he's on the phone a lot, and he's getting really into the information that he's getting. And then what started happening?
Yeah, and also too, he decided to go to school to get his certificates in cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So it just coming together for him. So I thought the cybersecurity was kind of interesting before all this crypto talk. I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And so these chain of events were just lining up for him. And he's like, wow, this is so cool. I'm going to be part of this movement.
Right.
And he understands finances and, that kind of, technology way more than me. But even still, I just didn't have a warm and fuzzy about it. And after he went to this Rasha healing, his personality started to change.
Okay.
And he said, oh no, my proctor, which by the way, you have to go through a application and interview before they'll let you in to do the healing therapy.
Okay.
And the guy that created the light therapy was a guy who worked for NASA previously.
Oh, okay.
So, and that goes on to, all the research that we know about.
Right.
So his personality started to change, and his proctor, that's just part of the healing process. You got to go through all the gunk to, and you got to get on the light therapy bed quite a few times before you'll start to feel that, that level lifting off of you. Okay. So he had started going through that a couple months prior to the crypto, and then he got into this crypto group. And the crypto group, like I mentioned, they said they had off-planet, technologies involved with this, and that he was their soulmate. There was a lot of talk around soulmate. And at first I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. He's got, people to talk to, because he's medically disabled through the VA. So he doesn't currently work. So he's trying to find a hobby, that he was passionate about. And so then not very long after that, he started just talking just these outlandish things. He started, saying that, he's a big part of this great awakening. He was putting himself in where he was, going to be some of the change that we were going to see. Okay. And that I needed to start helping him with that, because I'm more social. People tend to react different to me than my husband, because my husband he was a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. So he has,
you said
that
he's very
presence.
Intense kind of person.
Very intense. Yes. And he wants you on board. And so that was one of his key things he always said to me was, you better get on board or you're going to be left behind. That was always the thing. And so, so he wanted me to start seeking out light workers. And it just so happened that one of our neighbors out here, she talks to ancestors.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what that's called.
A medium?
Yeah, some kind of medium.
Okay.
And so
biblically speaking, they call it necromancy. But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which I knew nothing about. And so my husband's like, I had a really good conversation with her. You need to reach out to her, and start looking into this stuff. Because there's a whole other level to this Christ consciousness that we're hearing about. And it's really about, that we are the center, not, God's our creator, but we're just as powerful.
Right.
As we heal ourselves and understand really what this universe is about.
That is how the whole Christ consciousness stuff is sold as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and you have to do you have to do the work to get that healing, to get you to that next ascension level. So, and this neighbor, she's a great lady. And so he had a really good conversation with her. And so after that, I was interested in finding out about past life regressions, because I had been hearing a lot about that. And in my research, it has been discovered that the Vatican is hiding, biblical knowledge from us, and some of that was around reincarnation. So I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, that's falling into a line. Let me see about that.
Mhm.
So I reached out to my neighbor, and my neighbor had one of her medium friends that does the past life regression work. So all along I was feeling, okay, I'm open to this. I'm open because, God is love, and he wants us to heal, and he wants us to get, to understand that there's a lot more to this world than maybe we know about, right? So I was open to all of that. And so I called the lady, we had a conversation. I had set up to meet with her the next week. And within that time, we're getting closer to Halloween. I was not coerced, but my husband was really leaning on me to go down to this area. I don't want to say the name of the place, but
Wellness center, we'll say.
Yeah, kind of like a wellness center, to reach out to the lady that runs the wellness center, because she has a direct tie-in to this, this Christ consciousness type of stuff. And she knew about the child trafficking,
Mhm.
The adrenochrome, all of the stuff that we'll talk more about later. But so it seems like every time my husband kind of, puts me down in a certain way about, me doing something and getting on board, I angrily will comply.
Okay.
So I was on my way to this wellness center, and I really didn't want to be doing it. I was kind of like, what am I going to say to these people? My husband already talked to them, and they probably don't have a good impression
Right.
of what's going on. So anyway, so I decided.
If I could just I just remember something that you mentioned to me, and I don't want to interject here, and you'll have to tell me if I'm remembering it wrong, but I remember you saying to me that he's spending a lot of time on the phone with these people from this Telegram group. And during that time, he began talking to somebody on the phone who he believed was his mother, who is not with us anymore,
Oh
right?
yeah, so we'll get
Don't
into
want to.
that.
Okay.
They weren't talking at this point yet.
Oh, they weren't. Okay. Don't mean
No,
to be a spoiler then. Sorry. I
that's
thought we were
okay.
skipping
That's
over
all
it.
right. There's a
Okay.
lot to this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we've got to uncover, the reason I'm sharing this is because at the end of this, there's a very strong testimony and how God was involved in all of this.
Yeah.
So, I decided that I was going to pull up to this wellness center, and I just didn't have a warm and fuzzy about going in. Did not at all. So I decided, okay, let me look into other light workers in the area. And so I pulled up on my phone, light workers, and there were quite a few that came up. I went down the list. Nobody was answering. I think I want to say it was a Friday or Saturday, I believe. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're closed, so I left messages. And then I came across your number, and I called it, and I think you didn't answer.
Right.
And then a few minutes later, you called me back, because I was in the car trying to figure out, okay, am I going to go into this place, or is this just a wasted
So I think
trip?
you actually called twice, because I tried to answer and it hung up, and I was like, it was probably one of these auto calls. And then you called right back, and
yeah.
And I thought, okay. So I
Yeah.
answered faster this time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I finally got to talk to you, and you shared your testimony with me right away, that you are closing down your business, and, God had worked on your heart. And you were leaving that business behind because of your newfound, belief
Yeah.
in God and Jesus.
I
So,
realized that the things that I thought I was doing were not what I was doing at all.
yeah. And your testimony was just went straight to my heart and my gut.
Well, and I think
Because
I
that
had
was why.
thrown out some terms. I usually do this kind of in a fishing sort of expedition way, but I think I threw out some terms like MK Ultra and, I
You
think I
did.
mentioned child sex trafficking. I'm pretty sure I mentioned Masons and I think I said all the key things that had you just, yeah.
And that is key right there, the MK Ultra, because I had been talking to my husband a lot. We had a lot of conversations about the MK Ultra that my husband went through as a young child.
Right.
So, he was up there at Shasta. He remembers events at Shasta, and I had been in my search through this pandemic. I found Gene Decode, and I found a lot of interesting stuff through Gene Decode, that the information that he had and the experiences that I knew of were like, okay, I don't know Gene Decode at all, but he's talking about an area that I know and my husband knows, and the stories that my husband has shared about him being part of a Illuminati satanic family. So that just, after that, I was like, whoa, okay. So, and on his programs, he has always shared, God and Jesus Christ. So I knew he was aligned, with what I believed as well. And so many things that are being revealed in the last couple of years. It's just, it's overwhelmingly amazing.
Right.
And so when you shared your testimony and you talked about MK Ultra and mind control and the sex trafficking and all this, I knew that we were on the same page. And I knew immediately that usually God speaks to me through other people in some events, and so I knew that was a direct message for me. And that was
because you'd never done hypnosis before.
No,
right?
Not hypnosis. I have a past with psychics and light workers,
right.
But I never.
And you didn't exactly have this, gnawing feeling or urge to go do hypnosis. You kind of were seeking out a little bit begrudgingly, right? Like,
I was.
Okay, I guess I'll go check this out, but I don't feel like
my heart wasn't into it.
Yeah.
And now I know why.
Right.
So as soon as I heard your testimony, I was just like, oh, thank you, Lord, for that, because that was a direct message to me. I need to get back on track.
Right.
So then after we had
I think we spoke for 2 or 3 hours, honestly.
What was that?
I think we spoke for 2 or 3 hours, our first phone call.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get covered there.
Yeah.
So you brought me up to speed.
Yeah, I brought you through my past and, what was leading me. And, so after that, the clock really sped up to the event that we're leading up to talking about.
I think that we spoke on a Thursday, and I believe
I'm going to look up. I'm going to look it up right now because
I
want to get the date.
Oh, I bet I have that too. Because I remember on our first conversation that you told me right away that your husband was speaking to his dead mom through the phone.
Correct. Yes. And I was off work on Thursday and Friday. So Thursday is when we talked. And then Friday, let's see.
Wow, I thought I had written it down here in my appointment book, but I guess I did not.
So we were right around Wednesday the 29th or 3rd. Nope, it was the 30th. So it was Thursday. So I don't
Okay.
even think it was 24 hours.
Right. No, the very next day, you said that God spoke to you and said, pack a bag, take your dog, and go to a hotel. And you
Yeah.
listened.
So during this time, I shared your testimony with my husband.
Okay.
And so it was Thursday that he started hearing voices.
Oh,
So I pretty much came
not
home.
just talking to people through the phone, but he was audibly hearing. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So after we had talked, I came home, and he had started sharing with me too that week previous to our conversation that really Lucifer, that's all a lie about
Oh, right.
Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
That Lucifer is the angel that's a big part of God's plans for this great awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And that we've all been lied to about who Lucifer is. And so
he's really the good guy.
he's really the good guy. And so, whoop, okay, things are getting odd. Things are getting really uncomfortable. I didn't like that.
You were not on board with that.
And I shared that with him because
Mm-hmm.
God has always given me discernment. No matter where I've gone, I've had a relationship with God that he can find me wherever, and he'll give me a certain message or a certain word. And I'm like, boop, okay, I'm back. That was one of those moments
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, why is my husband talking like this? This is crazy. And so I had shared that with him.
Mm-hmm.
And because there are certain things that I won't bend, and I know in my heart what that meant. And so after that, I came home. I had some errands I was running or something, and I came home in the later part of the afternoon, and he was on the phone. And I said, "Oh, who are you talking to?" He's like, "My mom." Well, his mom's been dead for at least 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad,
Right.
his dad
Who
has been
died
dead
before he was born?
before he was born. And his dead girlfriend, who died in that tragic accident when she was 16.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow.
And now you don't believe, you never did believe necessarily that we can speak to the dead. You didn't necessarily believe in ghosts.
No.
And you told him so. You said, those aren't ghosts.
Yeah. So
That's not your mom.
so that's when I started to say, that. And I also said, why of all people would you reconnect with your
Right.
mom? Like, you guys are
Right.
best friends when she tortured you when you were a
Right.
child.
Right.
So, which he didn't have the answers to.
Mm-hmm.
So he proceeded to tell me that he was going to go on a walk, and he was talking in the house with these people. He had his mic on and everything, his ears on, and I could hear him saying, "Oh, well, that's okay. She just needs to wake up,
Mm-hmm.
and then she'll see the truth." And he started talking about Clone Wars, and his mind was all over the place. So I was just like, I'm not understanding any of this, and I really don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he proceeded to go on a 3-hour walk in the middle of the night. And if anybody knows my husband, he is a homebody.
Mm-hmm.
He used to like to hunt and, do the outdoors, but through his PTSD and stuff like that, he's usually home playing his video games or doing something like that. He never goes anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He was gone for 3 hours. And and I would text him periodically, and he'd say, "Stop trying to interrupt my, I'm trying to get to God. I'm trying to get to God. I'm on a mission right now," kind of stuff. Just weird, bizarre stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what is going on? He's on. And then he said that his mom, he believes, is Cosmic DJ, who's a part of this cyber group that he's involved with.
Okay.
So then later he comes home and I'm like, where have you been? What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And he still had not changed his mindset. And I've never heard my husband ever talk like this. This is just like crazy talk. And so he comes home, he sits me down on the couch and he goes, look, I got all of these pictures, family pictures from my cousin. And let me show you a picture of Miriam, my girlfriend that died at 16. I think that she's this person on this cyber team. And he showed me a picture of her, and they have the same name. They have the same name. And she's sending him pictures of like family from long ago.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't have a good feeling about this. Something is wrong. Please listen to me. Please listen to me. This is not right. And this was before I really understood about skull technology and the way that
skull technology. Got you.
The way that the Luciferians are affecting us through videos, through video games, through music, through everything. And I was just like, the way he was looking and acting was not my husband. And so I just said, I just don't have a good feeling about any of this. And so the next day he was still, he went into his bedroom for the rest of the night talking to people on the thing. And I was just like, what am I going to do? God, I don't know what to do here. This is not good. This is demonic. And he shared with me too, before he went to bed, he said, well, they were trying to tell me that you were a witch and that I needed to kill you. And I said, okay, well, first you guys are telling me that everybody's here for me. That's another key thing he said, is that everybody was there to protect me and that I just needed to wake up to see the truth. And so they're just waiting for me to wake up. And so the next day came and things just got weirder. He just sat in that room talking to people that are dead. And I came back. I tried to reach out to him, before I think I'd talked to you. And I came home and I just had this gut. And I said, look, these are demons. I'm clear on that.
Right. You're not talking to your mom.
Right. And that's not your mom. And God is telling me to share this with you. And so he would not listen. And I told him that I was going to leave or he was going to leave because, and things are getting really strange. And you're going to have to leave if you're going to continue this. And so God told me to grab my stuff, get out of there. And I went to
you have to take the dog, right? Which you wouldn't normally do.
Yes. And I took my dog and headed to a hotel. And I was there for a few hours probably. And I got a call. And it was funny too, or not funny, but when I was leaving the apartment, I looked behind me because I was afraid he was going to come out with a gun. I just had that feeling. And there's more, to the backstory a couple days before I even talked to you. So I left, and then I was getting a call from my coworker, and it was like frantic on the other line. And they said, Monica, where are you? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I had this feeling. God told me that I needed to go to a hotel because there were some strange things that were going on with my husband. And, but they were like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, yes. And so they put me on the line. I guess the officer was there. And my coworker said, there's an officer here and he wants to talk to you. So I got on the phone with the officer, and the officer said, to me that they had gotten a call from my husband saying that he shot me, killed me, shot me. I don't know. I'd have to listen to the 911 call. And that he wanted them to come see if I was okay. And so he said he had fired a few shots into the apartment. And so the officer...
Now that's what he claimed. Your husband had claimed that. Nobody had there was no report from anyone else of shots fired at that time.
No.
But he called the police on himself and confessed to having shot you and said you were in there with him and he wanted their help to see if you were okay. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, the officer's like, well, obviously you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your husband? And I said, well, he's highly trained. He was a Marine Corps staff sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to say his unit, but a pretty engaged unit
mm-hmm.
in the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars. And so he said, well, nobody's made any complaints that there has been any shots, and you're obviously alive
mm-hmm.
in a hotel. So we're just going to we're going to back off and see what happens from there. Maybe he'll cool down, maybe.
And while it's confusing, there's this feeling of kudos to them for not wanting to escalate it. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, so then I don't know how much time had gone by,
mm-hmm.
but I got another call.
I think we were on the phone at that point. Mm-hmm.
I got another call from the officer and said that he had called a second time, I believe. It's kind of hard to recall all this because my stress and my just everything, so if I don't have it
happened really fast.
It happened really fast.
Turned into just a blur. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they said that they were going to have to escalate at this point, that there had been shots fired.
Right.
And so the next steps were going to bring in a hostage crisis negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, is this really going on right now? I mean, how
well,
do
and by then we're talking about, it was October 30th, right? So it was Saturday by then.
It was, no.
Because the next day was Halloween.
Yeah, I think, was it Friday that was Halloween? Let's see.
No, Halloween is on the 31st.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
yes.
So it was Saturday by then.
Yeah, which is Sunday, which is eerie. And, finding out what's really involved with Halloween that thousands of people aren't aware of, or they're not choosing to look at it, is that is a huge evil satanic holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So, which, leads me to know that my gut was right all along. Why would this all have to go down on that day?
Yeah.
So anyway, so they had called me and they said that they were escalating it, and they had me play a message to him, for him to stand down and to try and reach out and negotiate with him.
Mm-hmm.
And several hours went by. They didn't know where one of our neighbors were. So I was thinking,
because he was shooting into the apartment above.
Yeah.
Right.
But they didn't know that at that time.
They just knew that he was firing shots, but they didn't know where they were
going and the
to.
Only way they knew is the neighbors came home upstairs and said, oh my God, there's bullet holes in our apartment in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the lead-in to escalate it with the police.
Okay.
But my husband called, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 times, but the second call was that he had fired shots, he's suiting up, and he's gonna take out, the cops if they interfere. So they were working hard to try and find the neighbor, because they didn't know if he was shot in his apartment.
Right.
And they were accounting for all the other neighbors around to make sure that everybody's okay. And so that was the biggest thing they were waiting on, was to get confirmation of this neighbor. So during that time, they were getting ready to negotiate with him to find out, what's going on. And then at some point, it had to escalate again, where they had to bring in the SWAT team because my husband wasn't negotiating with them.
Right. And at this point in the video, when I edit it, I'll probably add in maybe a couple of news articles, online news articles of that. So. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So it just escalated really quick. They were going to have to use lethal force to get into the apartment. And they were asking me, what time does your husband go to bed? And I'm like, I thought that was really strange because I don't think he'd go to bed in the middle of this.
Right.
Because there was no movement.
Right.
So this whole time I thought.
But they were able to ping his phone. So they said his phone was in the apartment, but they couldn't figure out where he was at, right?
Correct. Yeah. So they had used their technology to try and track where he could possibly be. So it just it was just a waiting game to find out if he was dead in the apartment, if he had killed himself, because that was really what I shared with the officers, is that my husband, he loved the police.
Right.
Never want to harm anybody. Right. So, but he always did talk about if he were to go out, he'd want to go out in a blaze of glory.
Right.
Right. So to, have a confrontation with the police and them kill him.
Right.
Because he didn't believe in suicide.
And also just to kind of interject, at this point, you and I had been on the phone for hours, kind of on and off, but we just prayed, just to really put that out there about what it was that was going on for you and what we were doing and talking about. You really began to be scared that he was going to force them to kill him.
Yeah.
Or that he had killed himself already because they couldn't figure out where he was at. And we really just prayed constantly all night long. I think we got, it was 2:30 my time anyways. And again, I'm back in the South, but that was some really, really, earnest prayer. Just
really and we'll find
prayer.
out. And we'll find out as we go through this conversation how relevant that is. So but I'm gonna have to take a break really quick.
Okay.
Can I put you on pause, or how does that work?
Let me.
Okay.
All right, we're back. So you were at, I don't know, we just prayed all night. I'll start there. You go ahead.
We did. And there was no mistake that God brought you into my life at that time, because the prayers were very powerful. And so, so this whole time it was hours and hours of this SWAT team standoff with my husband. And it turns out that as they were just getting ready to break down my door and apply lethal power, which would have damaged this whole place, and would have killed my husband instantly. I was having to wrap my brain around this whole thing, like,
well, because just a minute ago you were just a married woman, and now you're facing not just that your husband is kind of having some mental instability, which we know was not an accident, but you might lose him.
It was very emotional, very dark time for me to know that life is never going to be the same ever again after this, no matter
how
what
it
happens.
ended. That's right.
And I was convinced that he was dead because there was no
wasn't
movement.
Sleeping.
There was no movement. There was nothing. So as they were just getting ready to break down and have 2 SWAT teams, so I think there was at least 30 SWAT.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the whole Reno police here, They had helicopters flying, you know. My husband came walking up on them. He wasn't even in the apartment.
Right.
He wasn't even in the apartment. So.
When obviously he started out there, or else he wouldn't have been able to shoot into the apartment above. So how he got out of there while that place was surrounded without being seen is, it's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So it's just, you know, there have been a lot of times since that I was like, God, why did you not just kill him? You know, why is he here? What's the purpose? And then I bring myself back that he needs deliverance as well because of just the history that I shared with you guys. You know, just a little bit of the history.
Right. It's really just
has led down his path. Yeah. So I,
because just to, you know, I got to throw it out there, and again, we can go into some of these things in more detail later, but only a handful of years ago, his son took a gun to school with the intent to shoot up the school and was kind of, you know, foiled by the police and shot up a police car instead, and is still incarcerated for this. So there's a bit of a family history with this specific thing, which is really, really interesting, and why it's so relevant right now for us to be talking about this, so that people can understand what it is that they're facing, why we need Jesus, and what it is that might be coming for us later down the road. So
yeah. So I find it just very odd, and looking at my husband just those couple days before and knowing him from before, definite difference. Huge. And his arrest mugshot is the eeriest thing I've ever seen. So I shared that with you. It did not look like the same man.
Right.
So
there's a really disturbing smirk on his face.
And knowing how he felt about what his son had done all those years prior, and everything that his mind would be corrupt like that
so fast.
And how God protected everybody.
Amen.
in my stepson's case.
Wow. Okay.
Nobody was killed.
Right.
Which was very unusual. You hear about these school shootings all the time, and they don't end up with people alive. And so you have that situation, and then my husband's situation where, again, nobody died.
Right.
Upstairs,
amazingly,
the upstairs neighbor, she said her mother had just been sleeping in that bed a few days prior,
where there now then were bullet holes through because he shot through the bed. And
there's about like 11 ricochets, so like the floor was just tore up. I mean, for nobody to be home then, for the neighbor next door to be fine, and for my husband not to open fire on the SWAT team, all of it, you know, for him to be out in the desert, that's a little weird, because they did have helicopters, and you have experts looking for my husband, and nobody knew he was walking around. Nobody knew that he wasn't in the apartment.
Right.
So
it's absolutely mind-blowing.
Right. And another strange thing was a few days prior to this, I don't know if it was before I spoke to you or not, he came out. I was going on my lunch break, and he came out with his rifle, and he said that he was going to go check some stuff out.
Oh, yeah.
And that he probably wouldn't be with me very much longer.
Right.
and that, you know, to take care of myself
And that was odd
certain
behavior
things.
for him.
It was all very odd,
Mm-hmm.
all very odd. And yeah, so God protected everybody.
Amen.
He knew what was in my husband's heart before this happened, and he got me out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the dog.
So tell everybody how it ended. He wasn't in the apartment, and
They took him into custody.
well,
He
he
didn't,
ended up coming and turning himself in, right?
not that he turned himself in, it was more like he wasn't aware what was going on.
Well, what do you mean? But I mean, he had to, because they didn't go find him in the desert. He was
No.
outside.
Yes.
He walked up to them, didn't he?
Correct. Yeah, they were
Okay.
just getting ready to come into the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were all in formation. And my husband came out from behind them, and he hollered and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" Like he had no recollection what was going on.
Wow.
And so he didn't, you know, try. I think he had one gun on him.
Mm-hmm.
We had 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he had one gun on him, and then the others in the apartment, and then one he had left and disassembled in the desert, is what he said.
Mm-hmm. But it ended up
Disassembled.
being at the school nearby, right?
Yeah, which is another strange connection. So
Because if he
yeah.
was in his right mind and knowing what his son did and feeling how he felt about that, like from what you said, he would have never done that.
No.
And that's kind of the
So
point of this interview, you know, just to let people know is how easily this could be anybody's loved one.
yeah, and to kind of share how I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but basically the video games our kids play,
Yeah.
the music that we're being exposed to. You know, my husband started getting into that different Hertz, you know,
Oh, right.
Hertz
Yeah.
music and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And we really have to be in conversation and in the Bible so that
Mm-hmm.
we are not caught up into that.
Right.
So it's the
We
movies
really have
we
no
watch.
idea what's
It's
in
the,
those frequencies that you're listening to on YouTube.
so here's kind of my my feelings on everything that's happened, and we can talk about it more, but I feel, and the information that I know about my husband's upbringing and everything, I feel like this is a super soldier situation.
Mm-hmm. We agree.
And there's just no chance that his son, and now him,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything else that we've been through
Mm-hmm.
that we haven't really gone into detail about, but also his military career. Why did he go into the Marines? Well, he went into the Marines because his grandmother had power with the judge.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, his father dying, him being put into the Satanic Illuminati cult. You know, he told me for years that he was being brought up to take down Christian churches. So me being naive to think, oh, well, he's sharing this with me, he obviously doesn't want to do that or be a part of that, doesn't mean that the specific type of mind control that is done at a young age, that you can't tell me there's not triggers there.
Absolutely.
And there seems to be enough going on in the reality that we're currently in, that those things are being exposed. And some of them are being exposed through the, you know, Christ consciousness ascension, and being exposed through the Jesus Christ God Bible side of things as well. So it's really trying to wake up and be aware and know the signs. You know, even me, I didn't really, it just happened so fast,
Right.
you know, that by the time they had gotten in his ear, literally,
Mm-hmm. It was too late.
it was too late. And so it's really being aware and being in relationship with God at all times.
Mm-hmm. And by
Because
God specifically, it needs to be pointed out because, you know, for years, I prayed before every single session. I prayed after receiving a call from everybody that ever inquired with me. I prayed that God wouldn't even let me work with people he didn't want me to work with. But by God, I didn't mean Jesus Christ. Not back then, I didn't.
right.
I didn't know the significance. I was a little scared it was a trap, you know, because I had bought into this whole Christ consciousness thing. I really had just bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Mm-hmm.
And you will if you don't read the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that's when I finally decided if I don't read it, then I have to believe everybody else about what's in it and what their opinion is and however they
Yeah.
twist it and manipulate it and use it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you really got to read it for yourself and
Yeah.
pray for yourself for the truth.
Right. And he's right there, and he's there for
Waiting.
us. And
Absolutely.
you know, the difference between when I know I'm talking to him and not is that it will align with scripture,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and because I've always had that discernment with God from experiences through my life prior to my husband, I've always been able to have that discernment to know,
Mm-hmm.
and also that he's not trying to manipulate me in any way,
Right.
and what, you know, is coming across. So
Right.
so yeah, but you said something that was really profound with me because I was questioning the Bible so much.
Mm-hmm.
Was that it does say in scripture that his word is infinite, you
Oh,
know.
his word shall not pass away. Right.
Yeah, it shall
Mm-hmm.
not pass away. And
Mm-hmm.
that was really key for me because I was like, well, we're all going to be lost if his words can be manipulated and
Right.
people can be, you know, to buy into this Christ consciousness
Right.
because, you know, the scriptures are, you know, they're manipulating us.
Right. We know the Vatican has really got its finger in everything. So
Right. But the key words in the Bible from God
mm-hmm.
can never be manipulated. So, but you also have to use your discernment.
Right. And you have to
Go with
be
that.
seeking things that are, you know, new versions of the Bible and things that are, you know, recent. You can go get, you know, some of the oldest versions of the King James version and you can see what's been changed.
Right.
So I do usually suggest the oldest version that you can get. I prefer a Bible app that I have that reads it to me, and I choose the King James version. And then I use my Bible to study along with that and double check.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the only way I've been able to consume. You know, just in the last few months, I'm almost done reading the Bible now because of how amazing this app makes it.
Yeah.
So, you know, like you said, it's so hard when you haven't ever read it before. If you're just sitting down
It
to
is
read the
hard.
Bible the first
Yeah.
time, man,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and get this Bible app. I'll leave a link for it down below or something, but go ahead and do that and study along so that you can just get it in there. And the main thing that I did that literally just changed everything for me was praying that God gave me a thirst for his word. I said, Lord, I know that I need to read this and I want to read it. At least I want to read it. Can you please give me a thirst for it, like a real thirst for it? And within 24 hours,
That's
I
amazing.
received
Yeah.
it.
That's
So
good.
pray for that. You know, it used to be that it
Yeah.
was like a chore. I'd get one page in and I'd be like, oh God, that was
Yeah,
so
me
difficult,
too.
you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so there's definitely, there are ways that we can get it in there,
Hmm.
because it's the most important thing that everybody needs to do with their life right now,
Yeah, it
if they
really
haven't.
is.
So,
It really is. There's a lot
mhm.
going on. These days have not been easy for a lot of people. I
Yeah.
mean, families have been tore apart,
Mm,
jobs have been lost. I mean,
right.
this vaccine mandate stuff
Right.
and other
People are
countries
really
locking down,
suffering.
and
Hmm.
it really is, and it can be a very confusing time.
Hmm.
But in my testimony, that brings me back every time, is that I will not be manipulated away from the Bible again
Mm.
because of the current events that you know, unfolded. And I feel like there's just so much to be there. There is so much that's being revealed to us. I mean,
Mm.
look at the
Hmm.
statue at the United Nations.
Right.
Okay, so there's stuff going on. I
Yeah.
truly believe we're in the
Yeah.
end times,
Yeah.
and there's just, it's very scary that to see the manipulation of Satan, and what
Yeah.
he's doing
Yeah.
to
And so
people.
many Christians are really unaware and or
Yes,
unwilling to have
yes,
these discussions. And this is certainly not to place blame on anyone, because the blame really blame the responsibility lies on me for allowing other people to show me what Jesus Christ was about, instead of picking up my Bible and finding out what Jesus Christ was about,
asking him
asking
directly.
him directly.
Yeah, yeah.
Because people are fallible, we're all human, and it's not like we just live in some regular world. The programming that's coming at us, most people, whether they realize it or not, are implanted. Most people, whether they realize it or not, have been ritualistically tortured in some sort of a way that allowed the fracturing of their psyche. And the next step from that
But
is
you see, with
they
my
file these
husband,
demons
yeah,
away in there. Absolutely. And
yeah,
so this is where the specific nature of my prayer had to do with MK Ultra.
hmm,
It had to do with um this is where I really need to just mention, if you haven't ever heard of Russ Dizdar, please go out there and search him up. A really great channel that has a lot of his information on it also is called Hear the Watchman Journey. And Russ Dizdar was one of the few Christians who has been talking about this stuff for a really long time. And so his information, he has a book called The Black Awakening, and there's some videos out about that, and he does some talks about it as well. And it relates to this. This is what
yeah,
it's about. It's about all of these sleeper soldiers that are really not just the United States, but all over the entire world. Because if you think that these forces all over the world aren't colluding, it's not about, ooh, yay, United States, boo, China. Everybody's on the same page.
yep,
And so this is really, really important stuff.
yeah,
If you have a family member who's acting, sporadically and erratically, like, go look this up, please, and
yeah.
educate yourself about what's possible and what the plan is, because it all goes back to Revelation.
Yeah, and they have a plan. I've watched Jesse Zabodar and some other people that have been out there sharing the truth of what they know growing up in an Illuminati satanic family.
And we
And
can't have to figure out whether these people are really for God or not. You say your prayer, and you filter that for yourself.
yeah,
You know what I
mhm,
mean? We
yeah,
can just take in the information, and if you
yeah,
have question, pray for them.
right. Yeah, and regardless of what their purpose is, they are sharing knowledge that is being exposed at uh, a good rate now,
Hmm.
that it wasn't before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but just those experiences and, of me and my husband's past, and, my husband's childhood, you cannot convince me that this is not all designed and set up.
Right.
And knowing that the government is involved, knowing everything that's going on. And, you know, when we have active shooters, well, what's going on? Usually
Right.
it's, you know, they're trying to pass gun control, or they're trying to get us to look away from something else that's going on, you know. So like,
Meanwhile, testing the waters and seeing what are they capable of? What are they able to get away
yeah,
with?
yeah, which is
How
scary.
far has their satanic technology come? Is it reliable? What can
Yeah.
they make people do who are really unwilling to do things?
Right. And then you look at some of our policies that they're trying to pass.
Mm.
Then you're like, even if you think it's not real and you look at those policies, you're like, okay, that calls into question, you know, or not even calls into question. It really then provides that segue back to God and Jesus.
It does.
And
It
the
does.
Bible. You're like,
It does.
wow, that is so relevant right now. It's
Because
like you have to be awake at every turn.
What could even protect you against such technology? You know,
Right.
and so this is totally so much of the reason that I did the work that I did and had the career that I had. I was trying to help people protect themselves, you know, and you know, at one point I was convinced that it was through you know, specific hypnosis sessions that I had written, and energy work and meditation. And so to really to find out that I was actually helping to further this satanic agenda when my intention was so fully not there.
Yep.
It's crushing to me.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think to all of us, I mean, I've had a past with light workers and psychics, and kind of charting it out and looking at it. Well, all the bad events that have happened in my life have somehow been tied to those events. So, you know, God helped me to kind of
seeking out the psychics.
Yeah.
To allowing to because essentially what you're doing is you're giving a human being the power of God over you.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the powers and the prayer.
Yeah.
You know?
Amen, sister. And so this is why
and
we have to put on the
word.
whole armor of God. Absolutely.
And so, his word. And
get your Bibles out, get your highlighters out, and you know, use these little sticky notes and tabs, and you can just start to mark things out, and you're going to have yourself a really fine guide for life in no time. And especially if you're praying, if you're praying and you're asking him questions, he's answered really almost every question that I've had, and some that have been lingering for years. And when you do this kind of research, you know, those lingering questions they're not easily answered.
Yeah.
But he will answer you. He really will. So And so just to kind of give an update about where things are right now, he is still in jail. And so for the moment right now, you're safe because he is incarcerated. But that's going to change at some point. And so if there are any real believers on Jesus out there watching this, we really ask for your prayers in this situation for Monica and for her husband, because he wasn't it doesn't feel like he was a willing participant in all of this.
No, he was
deceived.
The
heartbreaking part, right?
He was deceived, and because of all his mind control and abuse, they could have just switched him on with a word. You know, they had pictures of him.
Right.
Who are these people? They had
pictures.
Those
handlers.
Yes. So he was delivered into those hands through, you know, the path that he was seeking.
Right.
But he was also seeking. So we have to be really careful in that seek.
Right.
So
that's why Jesus has to really be the head of what you're seeking. And you ask that.
Right. And, and as soon as my husband felt that the Bible was no longer tangible.
Right. Yeah. He suddenly felt like it wasn't relevant.
Right. Yeah. So
Because he bought into
sorry, my
the
puppy.
flip-flop of, well, it's really Lucifer who's here to save us all and set us free.
Right. So we really have to be aware,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I'm sharing my story.
Mm-hmm.
Is because I was going down that path.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You
I
know?
was too, and I just completely unaware.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with my husband's upbringing, it was probably just perfect for his handlers and whoever else was involved. I mean, he was saying that this was like Star Wars, the Clone Wars,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that he's been here and done this before. He's part of the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his other men that were out there, you know, fighting, super soldiers. I mean, it was a lot of stuff was being revealed, because then when I went to look up about the Grateful Dead, I'll share that with you on the next segue. My heart just dropped. I was just like, oh my God, okay. They talk about this in Satanism and all of this stuff. And here I am with my husband saying key words that there's no way that he would say previously.
Right.
No
Right.
way. It was like he
Right.
was activated,
Right.
you know, to do whatever he was going to do. This was also around the time that, you know, and I know that they meant this event to be bigger. And the reason I think that is this was right around the time of the Alec Baldwin shooting. And usually what they do is they try and make another bigger event somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's what was going on, but that's just a example of how these people work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So because on Facebook he was saying all these crazy things,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of these crazy things are going on.
Right.
Child
Right.
trafficking,
Right.
adrenochrome,
Right.
all of the stuff that I know of, and
Mm-hmm.
I've researched through credible sources, and just looking back 30 years for things
Right.
that I've heard and been exposed to. These children are being tortured at a level that their suffering is greater than our money system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all organized elites, you know, government, Illuminati families, all of these people, these satanic cults, it's all the same thing.
They trade
And
in
so,
humans.
yes, and so, you know, I mean, it's just atrocious what's going on, and now we're in a pandemic because of it. You know, so
Well, it's the end game, and you know, Satan came to kill, steal, and destroy.
That's right.
And we need to believe
Right.
that is such a serious mission of his, that we can arm ourselves with the word of God. And so, you know, I think I sent it to you, but I saw in one of these videos the other day, it said something like, part-time Christians can't defeat full-time devils. And
Right.
I really want
yeah.
people to think about that right now,
Yeah.
because it's our children's lives that are at stake right now. Things are
Yeah.
getting very serious, and it is time to pick a side, and you will have to pick a side at some point. And the road that I started going down was that, I just had to come into balance with all these wicked things that are happening in the world, so that I could forgive it, so it could stop happening. But really, when I started reading between the lines and what was being said, and what I was starting to accept, it equaled more do as thou wilt. And so we got to be on our toes. We live in a spiritual world. We wrestle not with flesh and blood.
Amen.
We wrestle against, I'm going to read it so that I don't really screw it up here. It's in the, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. This is Ephesians 6, verse 10, where you'll find the whole armor of God. So
That's so
And actually,
relevant.
specifically, that's verse 12, but that's where the whole
Mhm.
armor of God starts.
Yeah.
So people have to understand we live in a spiritual world where this empty space around us isn't empty at all. And
Mara, no.
you know, how is it that psychics can know about you? How is it that you think you're talking to your dead grandmother? And let me just spoiler, you're not talking to your dead grandmother. That is a demon. But it's likely a demon that has been with your family for so long. They know everything about you.
Yeah.
You know, these are lying spirits.
Yeah.
So we really need to be careful. We need to be prayerful. We need to be vigilant. We need to put on the whole armor of God. And
Yeah.
it's time for us to come together. And it's time for Christians to start talking about these things. You know, I hate to say it, and again, this is not placing blame, but if I had some Christians like Russ Dizdar and like some of these amazing people that I've found since I became a Christian to answer some of the big questions that I had about my life, I would have been in a different place a long time ago, and I probably would have never opened my business. I
Right.
was looking for answers, and the only people that were giving them was the New Age.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And it's a big movement, and
And
it's
at that, we're almost at 2 hours, so it's probably a really good place to end this.
okay.
I just want to thank you so much, Monica, for talking with me today. And we're going to do this again really super soon because there's a lot more to talk about. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being a prayer warrior with me through my darkest
Man,
time.
thank you for calling and answering my prayer about whether I should still be even talking about this stuff or not, you know? So thank you for listening
Yeah.
to that voice inside of you that came from God. And
Yeah.
God bless you. Thank you
Yeah.
so
You
much.
too.
So I just want to end with a prayer, which we're just going to be doing together more and more. And so if you've been facing anything like this, feel free to email us and we'll put you on our prayer list as well. And we'll be praying for you because this is what we need more than anything right now is prayer. So let's just bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, dear Lord Jesus Christ, we just thank you so much for creating this space for us, for bringing us together to share what we have experienced in our lives as far as your glorious, amazing power and your power to keep us safe during really trying times. We pray, Lord, that this video and this testimony reaches all the people who need to hear it the most, and that it brings you closer with them, that it opens their eyes to what it really is that you did for them when you died on the cross, and what it is that your blood provides for people. We praise your name and we thank you for the luxuries that we still experience now, for our food, for our safety, and our connections. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. That was lovely. Yeah. I just think the more people that we can help wake up, the weaker the enemy gets. And we know God
Amen.
wins in the end.
Yeah.
And it's just important to not live in the matrix anymore.
Yeah.
As much as possible,
Right.
and to know how Satan tries to enter into our lives in these different ways. And that's why
we have to be vigilant. We have to not give him a foothold, you know?
yeah, and we
And
have
it's
to be guarded
through our weaknesses. Yeah.
Yep, it is.
So thank you
as
so
many
much.
people as we can reach, the better we're going to be.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
very grateful.
Yeah, me too. I'm so appreciative that you came into my life when you did, man.
Yeah, whirlwind.
It was an answer to so many prayers. So yeah.
All right.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Take care. Till next time. Bye-bye.
time has come for some freedom.